Thanks so much, everyone, for watching. We've got an epic lineup tonight of speakers. We've got an awesome panel here. Amazing group of functional doctors, technology, activists for a leap forward in medicine.
This is a great gathering.
You know, our goal is to make it easy for practitioners to learn in community. There's a lot of community happening tonight. I want to say welcome to all of the communities that are watching at home. This ecosystem that is being set up by the Meetup groups, we believe will be the future ecosystem of this evolved primary care network that we are looking to develop, and it all revolves around you. There's an exponential potential to the future of medicine. This is an allopathic conversion machine that we have just created. And it has exponential potential because it can be seen by 1 billion people at no extra cost. That's the beauty of the internet.
Welcome to the Functional Forum. Thanks for joining us in the charge to accelerate the evolution of medicine. Please welcome your host, James Maskell.
Hello and welcome to the October Functional Forum, the future of functional. In this episode, we're going to look forward into the future and see what are the trends that are going to transform functional medicine in the next 5 years. If you've been following our work for a while, it'll be no surprise to you that two of the major trends that we see are community and coaching. And over the summer, we ended up getting a lot of great footage from our Future of Functional Summit in Utah and many other events that we attended. And so we brought the best of it for this episode. Enjoy. So another concept that we think is going to take functional medicine forward significantly over the next 5 years is health coaching. And as part of our Future of Functional Summit in Powder Mountain, Utah, we had a panel on the future of health coaching as part of functional medicine. We included some leaders in the field of functional medicine health coaching, and also Dr. Sachin Patel, who at the Living Proof Institute is integrating coaching into his practice in a really innovative way. There were some great moments from the content, and here are some of the best bits. Enjoy.
We, as practitioners, we can only do so much. And we know that the doctor does what they do best. They can diagnose, they can treat a condition, and they didn't go to school for training in how to help people become inspired to make those crucial changes. So even if they say, we're prescribing lifestyle change, we want you to do this, they're languaging it in a way that the patient is sitting there and then they walk out and they don't know often where to start, or they're still very resistant. So what coaches do is they bridge that gap. And a coach is somebody's personal cheerleader, their personal ally, to inspire passion and purpose in others. And so I felt that that's the missing link in functional medicine, because often they are overwhelmed. They don't know where to start, or they are not overwhelmed and they start to make some changes, and then there's an obstacle, a setback, and then they pull back from it and they don't continue. So a coach is not there to replace a practitioner, to replace whether it's a physician, a dietitian. They're there to support. And so what we do is create alliances to say that they can partner with doctors, they can partner with nutritionists, and create that now somebody has their own personal ally who can support them through that journey. And what a coach does, it comes from client-centered psychotherapy. And it's going with that person, even if where that person wants to go may not be the client, may not be the coach's agenda. And so it's really, that's what makes it so powerful, that it is completely client-centered.
I think you've probably noticed, like me, at the functional medicine events, the leaders, Bob Roundtree, Jeff Bland, whatever, saying, hey, I'm glad you're learning all of this science right now, but you need a coach to implement it. And that seems to have changed in the last year particularly.
Absolutely. And coaches are trained in functional medicine now speak the same language, and there's more and more doctors. We're seeing every year more and more people coming to us saying, help me get a coach. How can I find a coach? So there's a big movement to understand what coaching is, as well as to go ahead and get a coach.
Thank you. Tracy, I just wanted to follow up from that. If someone has coaching skills, or they have some sort of skills in that regard, what is it about the functional medicine operating system that sort of up-levels their ability to be able to help people?
I think one of the most important things is credibility and skill set, because there are a lot of coaches who want to practice in a very basic, foundational type of way, sort of life coaching, if you will, and very similar skill sets there, to Sandy's point, in terms of rapport and accountability and inspiration. But the science of functional medicine, I think, adds a tremendous component of in the educational realm. Because when a patient is not feeling well, they will often exhibit compliance because they're afraid, because they're desperate. But it becomes very challenging for them to sustain that wellness without the right type of support. And I really believe that's one of the biggest benefits of this magical combination of functional medicine and coaching. Because if we can explain to someone with language they can understand, with simple analogies they can relate to, what's actually happening in their gut, and why certain behaviors drive that dynamic, and why certain positive lifestyle choices will prevent it, you can watch them come alive with knowledge. And I think that's why education is so huge for coaching, because people will do what you tell them to do as long as there's a negative motivation, right? I want to feel better. I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. But once they have the knowledge, then they want to tell everyone they know. And they go to family reunions and their work colleagues and their best friends. And I told them, do you know why you have IBS? Let me tell you why. And I drew a picture and I told her, don't listen to those blogs online. You have to get real science. Well, then that person is on fire. And they become a community to the people they know, so that health and wellness, again, becomes a community movement. So I really think coaching is a linchpin for creating this sort of cascade effect. They told two friends and they told two friends, based on real solid science versus a whole bunch of myths and what people manage to find online.
Awesome. Andre, you've been doing this in your practice. I'll give you this mic if you want this. You've been obviously doing this with Replenish and now, Functional Nutrition Alliance. As you've trained these thousands of people, how do you feel that sort of like is the best order of you're very into order, right? So what's the emerging order for these providers to work together in this team?
Yeah, I should say that in addition to being a quick start, I'm an implementer, which means I like to break things down. So one thing I want to say is that I loved that Christy Hughes several years ago at the Integrative Health Symposium stood up and asked every type of practitioner to stand up by their title. And then she said, who here is a health coach? And asked everybody in the room to stand up. And Sachin is really demonstrates this throughout his clinic and what you subscribe to, and that all of us are coaches in some way or another. And we all need to be to understand the functional medicine model. So I really like to look at the gap in the functional medicine model, because in order for the operating system to function, every type of practitioner needs to know and have a system in which we work. We need to understand the science, the operating system within, like Tracy is talking about, and we need to understand the systems with which we approach things. So functional medicine doctors are still often working at what I call tier 3, the third, the infection model. And we need to understand through the nurses, the physician's assistants, how to work at what I call tier 1 and tier 2. What are the non-negotiables that allow somebody to heal, and what are the deficiencies that really we can understand through a scientific perspective to get into a person's ability to heal and to subscribe to those infection protocols. So I like to call it a 3-tiered system, and I think we need to understand that at every level. I really feel that the allied functional medicine practitioner is what becomes primary care, because the doctors are too overwhelmed with all of the everything that they're being asked to do in the functional medicine model, and that they're not necessarily trained, like Sandra was saying, to deal with different aspects of modification, behavior modification, and deficiencies, and understanding how to remedy them. So I think it's really up to us to wake up the other practitioners. I love training the nurses and the physician's assistants and the dietitians to get in there and work in partnership. So that's how we're going to really make this change. And I think all of us here are about the partnerships we can create to make the functional medicine model work.
Awesome. Thank you, Andrea. And Sachin, maybe I can just come to you because like last year, one of the most, I do, basically the way that I sort of seek to learn what's going on in the industry is I'm just interviewing people. We've done 3 summits, that's 90 interviews, 150 podcasts. And Sachin, we did an interview where you sort of described the order in which people sort of have to earn their way through the clinic. And I'd love for you to just share that because I just feel that that's something that you have locked down, that organizes the providers in what seems to me like the optimal order.
Sure. So first of all, I think that what we have to realize as practitioners is the value of our care is actually $0 if our patients don't take action. So we could charge them whatever we want, but if that person leaves and doesn't do anything, then it's a complete waste of their time, our time, and unfortunately their money. And I think that all of us want our clients to see results. Each and every one of us wants our people to get better because that's what we do this. We don't do it for the Ferrari. We don't do it for the Lambos, right? Like, I don't think anyone's here to do it for that reason. So we do it because we want to see our communities heal and get better. So I think the thing with us that makes our practice really unique is and I'm sure many of you are applying this, is you have to be very selective with who comes into your fold. You have to have somebody, a patient, who's coachable. Because if somebody's uncoachable, it doesn't matter how good you are as a coach. It doesn't matter how well you lead them if they're not somebody that can be coached. So filtering that person is very critical. Our time is extremely valuable. Who we spend that time with is extremely important. And the value that we generate through this process can be infinite if that person takes action. And as Tracy was saying, if that person takes action, gets results, and then starts sharing with other people, the value that we're able to deliver is essentially infinite into our communities. So the way we process patients before they come to us is our primary objective is to teach people how to stay out of our office. So we do that we have an online Facebook community. We do that through the education that we share online because I believe that about 80% of people, it's like the Pareto principle, 80% of people actually don't need our care. They just need to care for themselves. And that eliminates most of the people if they can care for themselves and their families. And it's really about self-love. But there's about 20% of people who do have stealth infections, stealth deficiencies, need a coach, need somebody to find their objective blind spots. And that's where we come in. So it starts by showing people you love them enough to keep them out of your office. And then with the people that do come in, you want to make sure they're coachable. You want to make sure that they're going to apply the concepts and things that you're teaching them. And then you have to provide them with the right people in your space or refer them out if you need to in order for them to get the results that they're looking for. So when they come to see us, they see a practitioner first. Their second appointment is what we call the anti-supplement appointment. Because we don't want to supplement lifestyles, right? I don't want to give somebody an energy supplement if they're not sleeping well, right? I can't out-supplement bad relationships. I can't out-supplement no time in nature and sitting at your desk. So we have to really get them to understand that we're looking out for their best interests. We're going to give them supplements for the true deficiencies that they have or the toxicities that they have, but we're not going to make this, walk out of here with a bag full of stuff because you're not changing your lifestyle. And so coaching is such a critical point. And so our coaches, our patients have access to our coaches through email. We have our Facebook community where people can post questions. And that allows us to scale time. So when you do things in community, you can actually scale time. People talk about time management in their practice, but I'm not interested in managing a finite amount of time. I'm interested in scaling time. So if I can do something, if I can share a 5-minute video and 1,000 people see it, I just did 5,000 minutes of work. So I've scaled my time significantly. And so online groups and communities are an excellent way to do that. If you're not doing that, then I encourage that you leverage that as best you can. And then we have a variety of practitioners that work with us. We have high-performance coaches. We have hypnotherapists, because a lot of people deal with subconscious problems, and we can't consciously fix a problem at a subconscious level. It's kind of like using whiteout on your computer screen, right? As soon as you scroll down, the problem's still there. So a lot of times we have to work with people on that level because that's where their behaviors and patterns and things like that come from. So we work in different layers with our patients. So consciously, subconsciously, nutritiously, environmentally. We just did a workshop the other day. There's a 300-year-old oak tree in our community, and it's the oldest tree in Mississauga where I live, and we did a community workshop underneath that tree. And the guardian of the tree, who takes a picture of it every day at sunrise, was there serendipitously. She was there, and she got to share the story of the tree. So pretty profound things start happening when you start engaging in your community and in nature, and giving people, you know, these opportunities to connect with you.
As you see, Sachin could definitely have been in part of the community discussion yesterday, because Sachin's using this combination of community and coaching, which we're talking about all weekend. You know, Sachin's really been innovating, and I can see it happening because it's all happening on social media, and I feel like I'm right there. You know, maybe I throw this back out to Sandy here, is that I think in the IFM survey, there's an understanding, more and more doctors are understanding that they need a coach, but it's not quite getting to a point. A lot of them are still delivering that service themselves. And I just love to get into a little bit here with you, is like, what is the value of that team? And why shouldn't doctors be taking on that coaching role?
Sure. So first of all, I agree with Andrea that we're all coaches, and learning some simple changes in how you phrase something, how you ask a question, how you give advice versus asking somebody for their meaning and purpose, and they discover it themselves. So that's very crucial. And doctors often have a hard time understanding. I had a conversation with someone in my community. They're setting up some functional medicine clinics in the area, and so they were going to have the doctor, the dietitian, and she was asking, well, what's the difference between a coach and a dietitian? Which direction should I go? What do coaches really do? And so, first of all, coaches really support that physician and make their lives easier. So there's been some studies that have come out in the past year that have looked at primary care practices. These were family doctors, and they looked at those who had coaches versus those who didn't. Now, these were not functional medicine practices. The coaches were not using the model of functional medicine coaching, but the doctors were describing just having a coach that they could now have their patients with chronic conditions, those who were contacting the doctors at all hours that were the complainers, difficult to manage. And they said now their lives are easier. And so on measures of stress, they were saying their lives were less stressed. And then they measured the patient on biomarkers like hemoglobin A1C. And those who had a coach to support them had lower levels. They also reported better quality of life. We are also doing our own outcome research. We have our students do an apprenticeship, and we have, they see clients virtually, and we have those clients fill out some measures. They do the PROMIS, they do the medical symptoms questionnaire from IFM, a couple other measures, and then we measure them again, and when they're through with their coaching with an apprentice, and the pilot results that we've gotten so far are very promising, where they're showing that, especially on quality of life and measures of well-being, just with a few, we're talking 5 sessions with a coach, and they're showing good results. So I think that doctors can and doctors do respect research. So we have those studies and say, okay, this is a result, what happened when these practices worked with a coach. So it's the whole office benefits, and physicians were able to go home earlier. They were able to, again, carve out, because their time now was spent doing what they loved to do, what they were trained to do, as opposed to working with some of these very difficult chronic conditions.
Absolutely. One of the things I'd just love to talk to you in, what I see as a shift in the energy in the industry is away from clinics where everything is a profit center, right? The visit is a profit center, the supplements are a profit center, the labs are a profit center, everyone's marking up everything to try and make a little bit here, to a point of like prioritizing trust, and then using trust as a vehicle to be able to, engage patients to save money on their healthcare. And I just wanted you to talk in how you came up with that model and why you think maybe that model is more suited for functional medicine for the masses.
Yeah, so I mean, it really was sort of born out of a need that I was hearing from patients, right? So as the deductibles climbed and started applying to everybody, everybody's now paying. Everybody's a customer, so they know how much things cost, or they don't know when they find out in sort of when they get the EOB or they get their bill. And so it really started just with labs several years ago. Patients stopped getting labs, and so then a lot of them were canceling appointments. So we were trying to figure out, if labs are the hang up, it's because of expense. How can we figure out a better way to sort of go about doing this? And so we started working with a company to do cash labs, which allowed us to be able to, sometimes literally pennies on the dollar compared to what they're getting going to the hospital. So a typical lab panel, and I have the example in the hospital invoice, but a gal, who was autoimmune and chronic fatigue, and said, yeah, I've got good insurance, I can go to the hospital. Because now I spend a third of my visit talking about financially how to navigate the healthcare system so that this can be a sustainable process for you. And she got a bill from the hospital for 10 grand. That was her out of pocket, which is absolutely crushing. Had she used the LabCorp cash lab option we use, $370. It's outrageous. And so that just kind of became now the focus, one big focus of our care is you can see me several visits for the year and do more comprehensive labs for cheaper than one visit with the specialist or 2 visits with your primary care doctor. And guess what? It's a bigger investment in your own personal health. And so now we've gone about finding, the guy in Indianapolis that does colonoscopies for $1,500 cash, both diagnostic and screening. And if you've ever had a patient who gets in trouble or got in trouble yourself, yeah, your insurance pays for a screening colonoscopy, but as soon as they grab the biopsy, it's now a diagnostic colonoscopy. 6 to 8 grand is the average cost of that out of pocket. $1,500 is what this guy does in his private surgery center. And so we're also sending people around the country, searching for cash elective operations, and even going out of country for some of those things. So if we all become better, I put my healthcare financial advisor hat on, is what I tell my patients. If we just become smarter there, we can save them tons of money. And we all know that we save the money anyway by engaging with them and teaching them healthy lifestyle choices and how to deal with the root causes of what's going on.
So the high deductible shift, more opportunity for functional medicine or less?
No, it's absolutely more. Absolutely more. Because again, patients not only are becoming more attracted to what we're doing, if we can save them money and we can have that conversation, but we can also, they're also realizing how expensive the healthcare system is and what they're getting for that expense. Right? It's a long wait in the waiting room. It's a 10-minute office visit with their doctor. Hundreds of dollars. So they're becoming more and more, disinterested in the conventional healthcare system. So it's all advantage to this side.
Beautiful. And I think the labs is a key point. Are there other things that you found that is curatable? And I guess the biggest thing I want to ask you is, I see that the biggest opportunity for our community is to develop trust. And one of the reasons why I want to focus on this, I'm not sure if everyone in our industry has always been trustworthy, right? Have we always been trustworthy as far as the way things are going? Like the internet really, sort of the truth will out, right? And everyone, did everyone always know that there was 100% markup on professional supplements, right? And so now the internet comes along and everyone works it out, and then how do people react? I think the biggest opportunity for us is to develop trust, because ultimately the providers that have left the system and are now operating in functional medicine feel a moral obligation to do it because of their own experience or otherwise. What is the quickest way to trust for the average provider?
You build trust with the patient?
Yeah.
I think you got to spend time. So you've got to have that business model and that clinic model that allows you to just spend time with patients. And just be very open. Be fair with your pricing. Be fair with your business practices. And share them. Don't wait for them to ask, and don't wait for them to be, for there to be some secret, profit center behind what you're doing. Just, post everything up front. Be transparent. But I think it's the transparency and the time spending, and share what you're doing, and it goes a long way. Patients will be sending family members and coworkers nonstop.
So if you've been following the Functional Forum, you know that last year we introduced a new idea called the Future of Functional in 5, where any practitioner could have an opportunity to give a 5-minute talk about what they see as the future of functional. One of the coolest things was that earlier this year at JJ Virgin's Mindshare Summit, we did a live Future of Functional in 5 with a diverse range of speakers across a different number of topics. So one of the best talks, and actually the winning talk from the live vote, was from Susan Pierce Thompson, and I think you're really going to enjoy it.
To
billion people on planet Earth are now overweight or obese. In America, 108 million people are on a diet. On average, they try 4 or 5 new attempts each year. 1% of them will get down into a right-sized body. Of those successful 1%, over 90% will regain the weight over the next few years. A fraction of 1% of people are successful at the weight loss game, and everybody's trying. A quick think would tell us we are not even in the right ballpark when it comes to weight loss. Not even in the right universe in our thinking. I think about this problem deeply and really differently because of my background. I was overweight as a kid. By the age of 14, I was doing drugs to control my weight. At 16, I was addicted to crystal meth, experiencing drug-induced psychosis. At 19, I was a prostitute without a place to live, doing crack cocaine. I got clean 23 years ago, 4 days from now, 23 years without a drink or a drug, and that's awesome, but food addiction took over my life. And by my mid to late 20s, I was obese. And at the age of 28, I started to treat my food addiction like I treated my drug addiction. And I'm here to tell you a few things about weight loss. First of all, food addiction is real. The only people who debate that are not food addicts, and they're not neuroscientists who study food addiction in the brain. I have a PhD in brain and cognitive sciences now, tenured professor, and I'm telling you, in the brain, food addiction is drug addiction. And I tell you that from personal experience, too. We are not thinking deeply enough about what food addiction means. When we think more deeply about it, first of all, it becomes clear that not every brain is equally susceptible. Research on both humans and rats shows that 1/3 of brains are highly susceptible, 1/3 of brains are moderately susceptible, and 1/3 of brains are not susceptible at all, which means that you can't take your experience with food and apply it to everybody else in the room. Also, it doesn't break down by BMI the way you might think it would. 22% of slender people test out as full-blown food addicts. And 49% of obese people test out as not full-blown food addicts. What does it mean to think more deeply about the fact that food addiction is real and that so many of us are moderately or extremely saddled with it? It means that for some of us, bright lines for the addictive foods are going to be the only path to freedom. Bright lines are clear, unambiguous boundaries that you just don't cross. Like a sober alcoholic doesn't drink, even on New Year's Eve. Someone who has quit smoking doesn't smoke a cigarette, even if it's a party on Friday night and everybody's having fun and it looks tempting. Because for an addict, 1 is too many and 1,000 is never enough. Now, with the addictive foods, sugar and flour, that means we're going to need to create a world in which on Thanksgiving, when someone says no thank you to the pumpkin pie, the people around them don't say, come on, no one diets on Thanksgiving. Well, 1/3 of our kids are going to grow up to have diabetes. Half of our kids of color are going to grow up to have diabetes. We need to change the way we think about addictive foods. And we need to create a safe world in which, just like on New Year's Eve, when someone says no thank you to the champagne because I don't drink, we respect that. And we understand that how we have learned to deal with food, to stay happy and healthy, is not how necessarily all the people around us need to deal with food, to stay happy and healthy. Bright lines for food are not for everybody, but they are for a lot more people than who realize it. A lot more people than who realize it. So we need to change our kids' menus in restaurants. And we need to create a world in which it's safe to say no thank you to pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Peter Drucker once said, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And I'm super excited to announce that we have an epic intake of doctors into our Evolution of Medicine Practice Accelerator. The Practice Accelerator is designed to help practitioners like you build these practices of the future, how to take advantage of technology, and how to reduce the efficiency that's inherent in the first era of functional medicine. If you're ready to join the Practice Accelerator, go to goevomed.com/accelerator to join this phenomenal group of practitioners. If you want to find out more about the Accelerator and you've never heard about it before, go to www.goevomed.com/brochure to get a free brochure to find out more about it. We hope that you'll join our Practice Accelerator community, and we'll see you there. So Kelly and I have many interesting conversations, but one of the most interesting has been the difference in results between going to see Kelly as a doctor in private practice versus being in a online group where there's a community element to the care. And one is very expensive and one is not so expensive, and yet interesting things are happening in this community environment. So the theme has been on community. We've been talking about building community of doctors. I'd love for you just to share a little bit about your experience, because I think that it's unlocking something that is very much a part of the future of functional.
Hi, everyone. How many of you have heard of the book Wild Edge of Sorrow? Have you heard of that book, anyone? Meta, that's it. From my side. I guess like the most incredible books sometimes, like you're saying, just don't have the exposure that they deserve. So this book is by a therapist named Frances Weller, and it's about the many different, 5 to be specific, forms of grief that we suffer from. And they range from ancestral grief that literally you incarnate with to community grief, like the wound of not having the tribe any longer, to the natural world, when you look at a duck covered in oil and you feel your heart squeeze, that kind of thing. And some of them, the first gate, he calls it, is the grief that is induced at the prospect of losing your bodily integrity or, of course, your health. So you can imagine that many of the people that we serve suffer from many of these different gates, as he calls them, simultaneously. And so many of us who do one-on-one clinical work can, engage in all sorts of therapeutic healing dynamics. But what is often missing is what you've been talking about from the beginning, and many of you I know operationalize in your practices, which is the community element. So in my practice, since I stopped prescribing almost, I think, 7-8 years ago now, my outcomes have been quite extraordinary, shocking to even me. And I, wondered how much of it is just placebo effect, the beliefs that I can engender in these people and their readiness, right? Because my screening process it's something like, a Match.com application. And so I really had a lot of questions about how that could be scaled in an online program that is exactly what it's the same information, it's the same tools, basic stuff, pillars that I do with patients. And what we found were a year and a half of, I guess, what you would consider a beta. And what we found is that the results are more rapid and more extraordinary, to the extent that at any given time I have 2 to 3 history-making case reports that I'm torturing myself to write up for the peer-reviewed medical literature. And it's shocking. And the only difference, because it's otherwise exactly the same information, is that I have community. And that's it. That's literally the only difference, that these people are in a container that is populated by others who are basically in the shit with them. And, many of the people, because it's not just women, that's another interesting factor. And by the way, there's obviously no screening, so it's just any old person can join. But nonetheless, these people sit with each other when they are actively suicidal, when they are bedbound, when they're otherwise totally disabled and incapacitated. And then the ones who have made it through the birth canal literally light the path. And, it's this concept of morphic resonance, that once someone gets there, it's easier for others to get there. And so it's been fascinating for me to witness. It's powerful.
One of the things that Terry Walls and Dr. Cara Parker, who we've had on the Functional Forum in the last year, talking about this community, even group visits particularly, they've said that the woman, the person who's been through the journey is a far more effective guide for going through it than the doctor who's sitting on the side who never had psychiatric illness.
No question. No question.
What is the delivery system of community that you've harnessed?
It's something. It's called Facebook. It's wonderful. Very aligned with my values. Yeah, Zuckerberg in particular. No, yes, and we've actually explored it. My team, other platforms. I'm sure some of you are even innovating these platforms as we speak for group connection. And the feedback that I get is that for whatever reason, it's hard to get this kind of active engagement elsewhere. So far, it's working, and I have one volunteer and one paid employee who have been through, the process and had tremendous success, and they create this space, and that's an important concept. How do you maintain the container if it starts to get dark, or if there's like some bad apple or something like that? How do you work with that without having an overly policed kind of environment? Do
you think, and here we have 4 of the meetup hosts that have built meetups in all the biggest cities across here. Are there lessons, do you think, that, as doctors try and work out how do we, get on top of chronic illness, it seems like being part of a community might be a good first step to thinking, oh, this is actually pretty valuable.
Yeah, I think that's, why we're all connected, why we're all here, because we realize that we have incredible power if we resonate, obviously short of plagiarism, if we resonate similar messages, and this notion of how to sort of do that, I think, is not totally intuitive. There was a learning curve for me, even to know how much to be involved, right? So if you're hosting, is it the you show? Probably not, right? So you're creating that space for other people to, sort of organically coalesce.
Okay. Organic coalescence is the theme of this evening.
Bad name.
No, it's good. It's perfect. One of the things that we're most proud of here at the Evolution of Medicine is the creation of over 500 worldwide meetup groups. And at our Future of Functional Summit in Powder Mountain, Utah, we spoke to 4 of the leaders of 4 of the biggest meetup groups across the country in Austin, Chicago, New York, and Toronto. Listen in as we get some ideas of the power of community and how bringing practitioners together can transform the future of medicine. Enjoy. What we've been looking to do with these meetups is really to create a safe physical space to invite new doctors into. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the key pieces is having someone on the team whose role it is to call people and invite them. And so the sponsors can sort of fit in there. Megan, I know that you obviously run the Toronto one. You've been in the naturopathic world and sort of innovating in that. What was some of the ways that you found to sort of engage into the local community?
Yeah, well, we have a relatively new meetup in Toronto, and we started it a few years ago, and it wasn't the right timing, and then we relaunched last spring, and we have a lot of influencers in Toronto. We have a lot of people doing really dynamic things, and we reached out to them, and we said this is about community, and this is about impact, and this is about creating an infrastructure for impact, and that message really resonated with people. And so what they do when they come to our meetups is you put your name on a name tag on the right, and then on the left you put what you're currently passionate about. And so for people who were new, it facilitated an opportunity to have a discussion point, and it rallied everyone around what they're excited about right now. It made a huge difference. And then we have medical doctors coming out to our meetups, which may not sound odd in this country, but in Canada, in our healthcare system, which sounds remarkably calm compared to what's happening down here, physicians can't operate outside the system. And so we have physicians who are interested in functional medicine. They want to run a functional medicine practice, and they're somewhat ostracized in doing that, and they don't have a sense of community and a safe place to go to talk about that. and we provide that safe place to come and talk about it. So they have found their people and their tribe. So there's a lot of isolated practitioners. I think sometimes we're running our micro practices, or we're unique in how we approach patient care within the broader clinics that we're in. And we really just focused on creating a place where people felt safe and felt excited. So we really focus on like what's the emotion of the event, and people really wanted to belong to that.
Why do you think we have, when it comes to building community, why are the top people that are standing up and building community all around the world a bunch of women?
We are stronger together, and I think that is inherent. I don't know, as women, I think we know that the tribe is stronger when we are together. And with all due respect to what James has built, what the meetups have done for us and what the functional forum has done is it's given us a rallying point. But I think at the end of the day, it isn't necessarily about the topic of the functional forum on any given night. It is the opportunity to come together as a group of people who want to create shift and change and make people's lives better. And I think that divine female energy, we want to create shift, and we want to bring people together, and we want to make people's lives better. So I think it's a natural fit.
What can we learn about getting people to show up in community?
So I would say that we got a lot of feedback from the people coming. That was the key. We started asking people what did they want. And what we discovered is people really wanted an opportunity to really connect and speak to each other, so the networking time was really important. As Jeff actually mentioned, food was also very important. So we reached out to our local community and found health chefs, and we also found nutritionists who were doing really great work. And we asked them to come in and to sponsor the events. So they were bringing in incredible food. So people really love that, really healthy, natural, organic food. And so we'd all meet for about an hour, and we would have, food together. And in the beginning, we played the whole hour and a half. And I think that really what changed it, the big jump, and more people started coming, is when we started shortening it down. So Patricia, my business partner, and I, what we did was we would watch it on Monday night, and then we would scale it down to a smaller amount. So we had about a half an hour. And so we'd play the half an hour, and that would give us more time. We'd have more time to network. And then the other thing we realized is the reason probably it was so successful when you started it the first 2 years in New York is we had really incredible speakers. So we had live, engaging conversations with experts. And so when James would choose a topic of environmental medicine, we'd reach out to our community and we'd find someone who was an expert in environmental medicine. We'd ask them to come in and speak, and we'd interview them. So one month I would do it, and then we'd alternate with Patricia, and we'd actually interview them and ask questions that were in alignment with what you were doing on Monday, but we were now doing it on Wednesday so that we could have the recorded half an hour session, and then we'd have more time to actually interact with everyone.
We set Anne is the head of community, and we said, Anne, we want you to build a community using only the resources that we've provided for everyone else to build a community. Can you give it a go? And actually there's a lot of things that people have told us, like you can't have a meetup in August, no one will show up or otherwise. Anne had one in Chicago that had 50 people like a week ago. Anne, you want to share a little bit about your experience of building a meetup from scratch with these resources?
Sure. So I started with 0 practitioners on my list of people to invite, so that was a little bit intimidating. But I just took my own advice. Nicole and myself just talked to all the people who are interested in starting a meetup, and it was this is your own. Everyone's motivated by the desire to connect with their community of practitioners, and like they said, I just followed my own advice. And I reached out to Orthomolecular and some other Enzymogen and some other sponsors. And I think, I don't know if you guys have mentioned this yet, but they played a key role, and we're excited, and they're in the industry. And I reached out. I said, hey, I have 0 people, but I'm going to take care of planning everything and hosting. And they really pulled through. I started with 18 people at my very first meetup. And I had 50 this last month, and yeah, there were a lot of people who were like, July, August, not the way to go, but I put myself out there and, like I said, followed my own advice, and I'm excited to share a little bit more about that.
So we forced Ann to do it without any help from us, right? We could have helped her much more than we did. We didn't help her at all. But there's a reason for that. You know, we knew Ann is capable, but then the question becomes, these are the same exact instructions we're giving to all the meetup groups, and not almost. Ann had like one of the fastest growing meetup groups immediately at the toughest time of the year. So that tells me that it's about compliance. It's about people following the instructions. I mean, we're giving them these instructions. It's the same thing with patients. It's the same thing. So, you know, what do we have to do? How can we, just as a community, get better at that end of things? Is it something we're not communicating right? Where is that happening? Because clearly the plan was there, and Ann had the motivation, and she'd created the plan, and she just followed that plan, and it worked. So we have so many people who aren't able to execute it that way, but obviously they're not following the plan, and we see that in our industry in many different iterations.
Now, one of the other hosts of one of our longest standing and most successful meetups is Dr. Ellie Campbell from Atlanta, Georgia. And at the Mindshare Summit, she shared her vision for the future of Functional N5 about how to create practices that can help a whole community. I really think you'll enjoy it. Check it out.
So I'm Dr. Ellie Campbell, and I'm board certified in integrative medicine and family medicine, and I've had a solo concierge-style medicine practice for 13 years in suburban Atlanta. I also teach doctors what I do, but I didn't always do that. For 13 years before that, I practiced in a community health center, and a community health center provides health care to the indigent and uninsured in the community. So I followed the best evidence-based guidelines of experts in the community, and I watched my patients get fatter and sicker and more diabetic and more depressed, and realized that all I was doing was bowing to the gods of pharmacology and writing prescriptions and not really healing anybody else. Well, my compounding pharmacist stepped in and rescued me, and he shared with me the world that changed my life, and that is the world of bioidentical hormones and innovative medical practice design. So I learned about the cash-only model, and this was 2004. There was no roadmap to do this. But I knew that what I was doing wasn't working, so I left my very comfortable salaried position and took the terrifying leap of faith into the world of entrepreneurship, and I started a cash-only concierge-style medical practice. For 3 years, my nurse made more money than I did, but I stuck with it because I believed in the model. But as we got ready to establish it, I knew that I didn't want to only serve rich people, because I'd come from this background of indigent care, and I wanted to find a way to give to the community. So when I wrote my articles of incorporation, I also wrote a tithing policy. Now, tithing is a biblical term that means to share 10% of your treasure with the Lord, and so what our tithing policy looks like this. 5% of the cash profits that we make go into our tithing checking account. Once a month at staff meeting, I tell my team how much profit we have, and each staff member gets a dollar amount to make a donation to the charity of their choice. So we donate to Habitat for Humanity, and we donate to the Down Syndrome Foundation, and we donate to the Cat House for abandoned pets. I don't care what the charity is, it's their money, it's their charity. But 5% of my patients don't pay me to see me. But coming from this background of indigent care, I knew that free is valueless. And I wanted to create a stellar model to deliver health care to the uninsured within my cash pay practice. So they're given a scholarship membership log sheet. They go out into the community and do 15 hours of community service. They turn it into me as if it were a check, and then they earn 3 months of unlimited office visits in my practice. I chose 15 hours because the membership fee for my practice is $250 a month, and 15 hours at $50 an hour equals that. So I value their charity work at a rate of $50 an hour. So this does three things. It's win-win-win. I win because I quantify the amount of charity care for my accountant. The community wins because it gets charity care 15 hours per member that I would never have the time to do. And the patients win because they earn their slot in the membership with me with dignity. So I believe that if each of us used our time, talent, and treasure to create a tithing program, that we could extend the reach of functional medicine far beyond those who have the ability to pay for it. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us on the October Functional Forum. The future of functional is very bright, and it's going to take you to help to facilitate it. Next month, we're taking on a topic that we've been waiting to do for 3 years here at the Functional Forum. It's on medical marijuana. Join us the first Monday of November. We'll see you then.